This is LibreQuest. My name is Matt. The date is the 8th of October, 2019. From Softpedia News, the final countdown. Microsoft to retire Windows 7 in 99 days. Windows 10 is already the #1 desktop operating system, having reached 900 million active devices only recently. But on the other hand, Windows 7 remains a major pain in the neck for Microsoft. Not only that Windows 7 is the second most used PC OS, but it is also close to getting the axe, pushing Microsoft back to the painful struggle of convincing users to upgrade to newer Windows. With Windows 7 set to reach the end of support, users have only 99 days to install Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, or obviously to move to a different platform like Linux or Mac OS. Microsoft's recommended option is Windows 10, especially given all the effort that the company puts into getting this version right. The clock is ticking on Windows 7. However, moving users from Windows 7 to Windows 10 might be much harder than it was to upgrade Windows XP devices to supported Windows back in early 2014. And it's all because what the transition from Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 or Windows 10 means in the first place. Windows 7 is often described as the last operating system offering the traditional Windows experience without a store and all the other modern touches. Windows 8 was the first version to come with a built-in App Store and the Metro UI, and while Windows 10 substantially refines the experience with all of these, it is still considered to be a modern platform by all means. Users who want the classic Windows feel are ready to stick with Windows 7, even after the end of support is reached, which according to Microsoft and security experts alike, means their system could remain vulnerable to attacks due to the flaws of the OS that remain unpatched. This is a good opportunity, in my opinion, to tell people about the benefits of using Linux and free software. The second article from Softpedia, this is by Marius Nestor, posted October 7, 2019. Sparky Linux 5.9 released with the latest updates from Debian GNU/Linux 10 Buster. The Sparky Linux community released today the Sparky Linux 5.9 rolling release operating system based on the latest Debian GNU/Linux 10 Buster repositories. Sparky Linux 5.9 is the 9th installment in the Sparky Linux 5 Nibiru operating system series, a rolling release version of the Debian-based distribution that aims to offer users to all the new packages from the latest Debian GNU/Linux release. Sparky Linux 5 is based on Debian GNU/Linux 10 Buster. In Sparky 5.9, the developers updated the base system from the Debian GNU/Linux 10 Buster stable software repositories as of October 4th, 2019. It's powered by the long-term supported Linux 4.19.67 kernel and includes various other bug fixes and improvements to make Sparky Linux 5 Nibiru more reliable. This is a quarterly update of live install media of the stable line, which is based on Debian 10 Buster, reads today's announcement. As usual, new ISO images provide small bug fixes and improvements as well. Sparky project page and Sparky forums got new skins, no big changes about the colors, but they are much more mobile. Okay, there's a typo in here. It's kind of confusing. It says, no big changes about the colors, but they are much mobile devices friendly now. And I believe that that's supposed to say much more mobile devices friendly now. Good article. You can find that over on Softpedia along with the first article. This one is from ZDNet. This is written by Stephen J. Von Nichols for Linux and open source. Linus Torvalds isn't worried about Microsoft taking over Linux, and you shouldn't be either. Every company wants to rule Linux. None of them can or ever will. Every time I write a story about Microsoft and Linux, I can guarantee I'll be buried under such comments as Microsoft is buying control of Linux, or Microsoft is just practicing its old embrace, extend, extinguish tactics to destroy Linux, or Microsoft is a wolf in sheep's clothing, it will wreck Linux. Here's the truth of the matter. Yes, Microsoft wants to profit from Linux, and yes, Microsoft wants to extend and control Linux. Guess what? Everyone does, and none of them can. At the 2019 Linux Plumbers Conference, I talked to Linus Torvalds and several other of the Linux kernel top programmers. They universally agreed Microsoft wants to control Linux, but they're not worried about it. That's because Linux, by its very nature and its GPL2 open source licensing, can't be controlled by any single third party. Torvald said, "The whole anti-Microsoft thing was sometimes funny as a joke, but not really. Today, they're actually much friendlier. I talk to Microsoft engineers at various conferences, and I feel like, yes, they have changed, and the engineers are happy, and they're like really happy working on Linux. So I completely dismissed all the anti-Microsoft stuff." That is a very interesting article. If you want to read the rest of that, it's over on ZDNet. So today I would like to talk about the HP small form factor motherboard that I've been working with to make my latest project, which is a newer system, but with older peripherals and an older case so that it looks just like a regular, a computer that you might have used in 2000 or 1999, around that time. And I will actually do a video about what peripherals I'm using, when they were manufactured, and that sort of thing, but that'll be in a different podcast. Today, I just want to focus on this motherboard and the issues with working with a motherboard that is so proprietary. So you're pretty much guaranteed, if you're working with a small form factor motherboard that is the BTX format and made by HP, Dell, or a number of any other manufacturers that make these kind of boards, that there's going to be a lot of proprietary headers and connectors on the motherboard. Now, typically in the BIOS, they'll give you the option to disable certain ports or headers that are on the board. However, HP, in the BIOS that's on this board, you don't have that option to do that, so it can make it very frustrating. So I wanted to do a podcast and just kind of make a guide to help anyone who might be working with an HP motherboard that has the same issues and they've used it in a build other than the intended hardware build that it was shipped as. So if you're using that motherboard in something else, or if you had a part that has gone bad on one of these systems and you can't get rid of these errors, perhaps this guide might help you. So let's talk about the board for a minute. The things on the board that are not proprietary would be the RAM slots, the LGA, and the rear I/O. Pretty much everything else is. The power supply is proprietary. It doesn't have SATA power connectors. It doesn't have Molex power connectors. And if you want SATA or Molex and you don't have an original machine, you'll have to buy a harness for the SATA power or the Molex power. Also, the USB 3 header on the board is not standard. Now, as far as the power supply goes, if you happen to be working with one of these boards, you can actually get a converter that will convert a standard power supply to the proprietary pinout of the HP specific power supply. So that's actually a good deal. So on my system, I'm actually using one of these headers to power a front panel that it's a front I/O that I put in the machine. It's got a USB card reader, a USB 3.0 port, and two USB 2.0 ports, and front audio that I can't actually use. And I'll get to that here in a second. But the real focus here is how to get rid of those errors when you boot the machine that say, hey, I can't boot because these devices aren't plugged in. And there are 4 of them. There is the rear fan, which is a standard 4-pin PWM header. So you can actually just plug a PWM fan into there, and that's an easy fix on that one. And that's what I have done. The second would be the front USB header 1, which is a standard USB header, and so I'm actually using that. That gets rid of that error. Now the USB 2 header is not standard, and the front audio is not standard either. I tried to use an AC97 plug and an HD audio plug, and the board did not work with either of those. So I am assuming that the pinout on that header is proprietary. So if you have this issue and you want to be able to just boot the system and not have to press F1 to accomplish that goal, the pins that you'll need to jump on these headers, for the front USB header 1, it is a yellow colored header, it's going to be pin 1 and pin 2. You can jump those by making your own DuPont connector or using one of those single wire DuPont connectors that are pretty common to be sold alongside of a Raspberry Pi. The second one is the front USB header 2. It is a minty kind of a color, and the pins on that you'll want to jump are going to be 6 and 7. The last one is the front audio header. The pins that need to be jumped there are the 4th and the 6th. And once you get those taken care of, then you'll boot just like any other motherboard, any other system. Now, if you can get a hold of the original harnesses that plug into these headers, it's going to be a lot easier to work with this board. Now, like I said, if you have one of these systems and there has been some kind of issue where those connectors no longer work or they are broken, and for some reason you're continually getting this error, then this is a good fix that will work, that will allow your system to boot normally so that you can bypass those errors. So you can't disable them in the BIOS, but by jumping those pins, you can get the system to operate as you would expect it to operate. And I hope that this podcast has helped at least someone who might be dealing with this issue. Or if you're just like me and you like to hear about different things tech related, even if they're a bit obscure, then hopefully this has at least been enjoyable to listen to. So thank you for joining me today on LibreQuest. You can get this podcast at LibreQuest.org. You can get this podcast on archive.org, and you can watch the video version on YouTube. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be back here tomorrow, and I believe I'm going to be talking about the different peripherals that I have used for this current build that I'm working on, which is the build using the old 90s peripherals. So I'll see you back here tomorrow, and take care. Thank you for joining me again.